and he gives Baby Yoda the little toy. Alright, so let's talk about Mandalorian Chapter 3 and the many Easter eggs, references, and things that you might have missed. This is Screen Crush. Mando communicates with Greef using a hologram communicator. This is a Star Wars staple, but it's the first time we've seen it on this TV show. Baby Yoda lets out an adorable squeal here. Now that's not an Easter egg, I just like hearing it. There's Jawas in the street, but I think at this point of the show, Jawas aren't really an Easter egg anymore. They're more of a kind of thing that's always around, like a pigeon or a pop-up ad. So that's one less Easter egg. Here's a Twi'lek woman, and the species also gets a name check later on.
I'll take you to the Twi'lek healing baths.
Twi'leks have been in Star Wars since Ula became a Rancor snack in Return of the Jedi. But I don't want you to think that all Twi'leks are exotic dancers and prostitutes. In fact, many Twi'leks helped make the galaxy what it is today, like Cam Syndulla, the Resistance fighter who helped the Republic take Ryloth from the Separatists in the Clone Wars, or his daughter Hera, a respected rebel general during the Galactic Civil War. So the next time you try to solicit a Twi'lek on the street, remember, this is a person, not an object. There's also a Kowakian monkey lizard on the fire, like we've seen in a previous episode. Jabba's court jester Salacious Crumb was one of these species. The droid guarding the Imperial entrance is a TT-8L gatekeeper droid like we saw outside of Jabba's palace. Herzog is wearing his medallion with the Imperial symbol on it, which shows to me that even though the Empire has been defeated, these aren't mercenaries. He's still loyal to whatever version of the Empire is left. He says,
Unfortunately, finding a Mandalorian in these trying times is more difficult than finding the steel.
Which could have a double meaning. One, that Mandalorians stay in hiding, or two, that the race was nearly wiped out in the Great Purge.
Now we live in the shadows and only come above ground one at a time.
This could also be a sick burn for reasons I'm going to go into in a little bit. He gives Mando the best car in a Camtono, and this is the best deep-cut Easter egg in the whole series so far. This object is an old-fashioned ice cream maker, and it was first seen in The Empire Strikes Back when this guy was running around with it when everyone was fleeing Cloud City. Later, he would get a name, Wilro Hood, and an action figure. Hundreds of people dressed up as this guy and reenacted his run at Star Wars Celebration.
Ice cream! Ice cream! Ice cream!
And it's because, for years, we've wondered why the hell this guy was in such a hurry to make ice cream. But now we know. He's actually running away with all of his valuables and a space safe. The skull in the Mandalorian hideout is a recast of a mythosaur. This is basically a Mandalorian dinosaur. The original human settlers on Mandalore fought these and then later on rode them, which is mentioned in the first episode.
Your ancestors rode the great mythosaur.
And it might also be a callback to the first appearance of Boba Fett as a cartoon in the Star Wars Holiday Special. Then we find out that even though Mando is a ruthless bounty hunter, he's a man of honor. He won't take the Mudhorn as a signet because he didn't kill it alone. A signet, by the way, is a small symbol that marks something as yours, like the Rebel ring in Last Jedi or wax seals used to seal letters. Now I'm going to predict right now that the season ends with Mando choosing Baby Yoda as his signet. The armorer makes him a cuirass, which is a medieval body armor that covers the chest and back. And then we meet this big Mandalorian, Paz Vizsla. Now that's an important name in Mandalorian history. Now after Mandalore's surface was destroyed by wars, for centuries the Mandalorians swore off violence and lived in peace. They even stayed neutral in the Clone Wars. But there was an outcast group of Mandalorians called Death Watch that wanted to make Mandalore violent again. They were led by a Mandalorian named Pre Vizsla. Vizsla did briefly stage a coup of the planet, aided by Darth Maul, before Maul cut off his head.
And only the strongest shall rule Mandalore.
Pre Vizsla, by the way, was voiced by Mandalorian creator Jon Favreau. So this Vizsla says that the Empire took the best car in the Great Purge, which we might see glimpses of in these flashbacks. So, what is the Great Purge? Well, Mandalore was occupied by the Separatists at the end of the Clone Wars, then taken by the Republic in the Siege of Mandalore. Afterwards, the Empire occupied the planet, and the Mandalorians eventually united under one house and rebelled against the Empire. So then when did the Empire strip the planet of its best car and drive the Mandalorians into hiding? Well, the Great Purge is never mentioned in Star Wars Rebels, and the Mandalorians on that show are still on Mandalore. So it seems like it happens just before the Battle of Yavin, or roughly 10 years before the Mandalorian. And here's something else. I don't think these scenes are from the Great Purge, because we see a Separatist battle droid here. I think that this is the Republic taking over Mandalore from the Separatists. Like in the next flashback, this droid is going to be killed by a Jedi or a Stormtrooper, and then maybe we'll get to see Order 66 executed on Mandalore. Or it could be that the Great Purge did happen at the end of the Clone Wars, that not all Mandalorians left the planet, and this is a particular faction of Mandalorians who were banished from that world. After all, the Mandalorians and Rebels don't have a code against removing their helmets. Small aside, the red robes we see in the flashback look a lot like the Life Day robes that the Wookiees wear in the Star Wars Holiday Special. Now, if that's the case, then these droids attacked the Mandalorians during the holidays when they least expected it. And also, I think we have an answer to the most burning question from the first episode.
Have you ever removed your helmet?
No.
Mandalorians do wear their helmets while having sex, and while they poop. Picture that, moving on. Mando and Vizsla go at each other's throats with vibroblades. These vibrating knives were first used by Jango Fett in Attack of the Clones, but have appeared elsewhere in the animated series. This person at the bar says a familiar curse word that we first heard a droid say to 3PO on Cloud City.
Nice to see a familiar face. Ichuta. How rude.
And we heard it in the pilot.
Chuta, Mando.
The subtitle says hey, but I think that's just Disney Plus cleaning up the language. The word is clearly some variation of you scruffy looking piece of nerf herder. The bounty Mando picks up is a Mon Calamari nobleman's son who skipped bail. The Mon Cala are an aquatic species with a ruling monarchy, which we've seen in the Clone Wars and in the comics. Now it sounds like Greef tells him to buy a can of Old Spice.
Buy a Campton Old Spice.
But what he's really telling him is to buy some spice. That's a drug that's mined on Kessel like we saw in Solo and was name-checked in New Hope.
We'll be sent to the spice mines of Kessel or smashed into who knows what.
Then Greef also fills us in on the Empire's status.
All that are left are mercenaries and warlords, but if it bothers you, just go back to the core and report them to the New Republic.
So the core he's talking about is the core of the galaxy. This is where star systems are closer together, so they're more populated. This is where you'll find wealthier planets like Coruscant and Naboo. The New Republic doesn't have a strong government, and that's somewhat deliberate. In the books, there's a bit more detail about this, but basically, after the rule of the tyrannical empire, the members of the New Republic didn't want a strong government or a permanent military. That's why in the sequel trilogy, Leia is leading an independent fighting force called the Resistance and not the army of the New Republic. Mando eavesdrops and hears Herzog say,
Extract the necessary material and be done with it.
Now I'm going to assume he's talking about midichlorians. But for what, we don't know yet. But the next line
explicitly ordered us to bring it back alive.
Implies that they were working for someone else who's trying to rebuild the Empire. Now this could be Giancarlo Esposito's character. Now I'm also going to guess that either him or Herzog was the Imperial commander behind the Great Purge, and that's why they have all this Beskar. So eventually, it's gonna get personal. So Mando returns to the compound, and hey, what's this? Now that looks useful. You could use that for stuff. Maybe to stop a trash compactor. Inside, we see an Imperial interrogation droid like the one Vader used on Leia in A New Hope. I'm not sure why they're not going to get any answers out of a sleeping baby. Maybe it was just there to inject him with drugs? I don't know. And we find out that Stormtrooper armor is vulnerable to fire, as well as blasters, lightsabers, and rocks thrown by teddy bears. But my favorite move in this fight mostly happens in the shadows because this is a Disney show. Mando uses his grappling hook to pull a Stormtrooper back into his vibroblade to slit his throat. Now that's how you rack up a combo. Then comes the street battle, which was nicely set up by Mando's lengthy stroll through town earlier in the episode. This established the location and the key components like the astromech droid pulling the cart. Greef says,
Because I'm your only hope.
which is a callback to this favorite Star Wars film.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
That was a cheap move.
There are several aliens in the bar who are the same species as Darth Maul. Throughout the episode, you'll also see Kyuzu, Melbu, Rhodians, Keterians, and Nikto. Now, most of the bounty hunters are just humans in cool costumes or species that we've never seen before. Except for this one, this is a really fun callback. That's your mom. Mando starts to disintegrate enemies like Darth Vader warned Boba Fett not to do.
No disintegration.
And then the episode turns into the part of playtime when you just go nuts and pour all your toys out at once. The Mandalorians come out of hiding with jetpacks and they start blasting away, including Paz Vizsla with a badass laser Gatling gun. Greef gets the jump on Mando, who for some reason left his ride unlocked in a bad neighborhood, and Mando uses his carbon freezing chamber for cover to shoot Greef. He ends the episode with a bad case of jetpack envy.
I gotta get one of those.
But hopefully he doesn't get a jetpack anytime soon because most of the action in these episodes would have been completely avoided if he could fly, and this would be a much more boring show. But what did you think of Mandalorian Chapter 3? Let me know in the comments below. And if it's your first time here, you might as well subscribe and click the bell. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.